She told me it was just a study retreat, but I was the one who paid for the tuition, and he was the one waiting in Paris. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 48, live just outside Seattle in a quiet town called Issaquah, and I've worked as a senior systems analyst for a mid-tier tech firm for the past 21 years. It's the sort of job that doesn't make headlines, but it pays the bills and offers enough stability for a man like me. One who doesn't mind routines, who finds comfort in silence and meaning in consistency. I married Elaine when I was 33. She was 30 then, a literature professor with soft eyes, careful hands, and a voice that could turn even grocery lists into poetry. She had a daughter, Chloe, from a previous relationship. Chloe was 7 when we met, all spark and stubbornness. I still remember the first time she glared at me across the dinner table as if daring me to try and replace her father. I didn't. I never tried to be a replacement. I just showed up quietly every day for years. I picked her up from school. I taught her how to ride a bike. I was there for the flu, the heartbreaks, the nights she thought she couldn't breathe because the world felt too heavy. I never asked her to call me Dad. But when she did for the first time at 15, I admit I had to step outside for air. We lived in a modest 2-story colonial house. White siding, navy shutters, red door. A maple tree in the front yard. A creaky porch swing Elaine loved to read on during spring. Our life wasn't flashy, but it was steady. I thought that counted for something. Chloe got into a private university out east. Tuition was steep, but I told Elaine not to worry. We'd saved, and I picked up extra freelance consulting work where I could. We covered the costs without loans. Chloe wanted to study art history, and despite quiet skepticism from friends who questioned the practicality of such a major, I never said a word against it. She loved it. That was enough for me. Elaine beamed with pride at Chloe's acceptance letter. She hung it on the fridge for a week. When Chloe left for college, our home felt quieter, but not in a sad way. More like a deep breath after years of movement. Started small. They always say that, don't they? That things unravel quietly, almost politely, before the collapse. Chloe came home less often. At first, that made sense. College is busy. Life pulls young people in all directions. But then her messages grew shorter. Calls got missed. Her spring visit was canceled last minute, her voice cheerful but vague. We're doing a study retreat in Napa, she said. A few of us and a guest professor from the university. It's part of an independent research series. I didn't question it. Why would I? Chloe was 21 now, a young adult, busy, brilliant, independent. I wished her a good trip. But then came the emails. One evening in April, I was combing through our joint inbox. We used it for house bills, travel plans, and university correspondence. A message caught my eye. The subject read, Travel Insurance Confirmation Paris Trip for Chloe M. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. The sender was a reputable travel insurance company. The recipient was Elaine. I opened the email. A full policy summary. Departure date, May 10th. Destination, Paris, France. Duration, 2 weeks. The insurance covered flight delays, medical emergencies, lost luggage. There was no mention of a study retreat. No university program code. Just Chloe's name and a destination thousands of miles from Napa. I stared at the screen, unmoving. The living room was quiet. Elaine was upstairs reading her usual ritual. I heard the soft rustle of pages. I closed the email, logged out, walked to the kitchen, made tea I didn't drink. That night I couldn't sleep. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was the beginning of something colder. A hum behind the ribs. A quiet scratching at the edge of trust. I didn't confront Elaine. I didn't ask Chloe. I told myself there could be a reasonable explanation. But deep down, something ancient stirred. I began to watch more closely. Elaine's behavior had shifted too, I realized. Subtle things. Her phone was always upside down now, as if shielding it from stray glances. Her laptop, once left open in the living room, was now password protected. She had started wearing new perfume, a delicate French scent I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, she shrugged, said it was a gift from a student. 2 weeks later, I found a second email. This one wasn't even hidden. An automated confirmation for a hotel booking in the 6th arrondissement of Paris. Again, Chloe's name. Again, sent to Elaine. No accompanying message. No details. Just a reservation and a price tag. I remember sitting back in my chair, breath caught between inhale and exhale. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just sat there. The next morning, Elaine left early for a faculty meeting. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I pulled up our credit card statement, searched for charges that matched the hotel, the airline. Found them. My name on every payment. I closed the laptop. Sat in the stillness. I thought about Chloe at 7, missing her 2 front teeth, stubbornly refusing to eat broccoli. Chloe at 12, sobbing over a boy who called her plain. Chloe at 15, whispering "Dad," when she needed me to check her closet for monsters she swore were real. Chloe at 21, laughing across the ocean in the arms of someone who wasn't me, supported by a man who didn't know her night terrors or her laugh when it cracked mid-sentence. The tea on the table had gone cold. I didn't touch it. I didn't sleep that night either. Somewhere in Paris, my stepdaughter, my daughter in every way but blood, was with a man. Professor, maybe. Someone who had the advantage of youth, of charm, of a classroom's authority. Someone who didn't pay the tuition. Someone who hadn't sat through violin recitals and emergency room visits. I stared at the ceiling for hours, as if answers were written in the shadows. No confrontation.
No acquiescents.
Not yet. Just silence. And the growing weight of a truth I wasn't yet ready to speak aloud. The storm had started, but I was going to walk into it with open eyes. And when it passed, nothing would be the same. It began with little things, the kind of moments you only notice when you've already started suspecting the air is not as clean as it used to be. I wish I could say I caught it all quickly, but the truth is, I wanted not to see it. Denial is a generous lens. It lets you pretend longer than you should. Elaine became harder to read. She'd always been composed, private, but lately her silences were different. Less peaceful, more loaded. Her eyes didn't rest on me the way they used to. Our dinners were punctuated by the scrape of silverware and the occasional polite exchange about work. She still said good night, but she didn't always reach for my hand under the covers. Chloe returned for a brief visit in early June. She'd been back from Europe barely a week. I met her at the airport. Elaine had an academic retreat in Vancouver, a coincidence I didn't comment on. Chloe looked radiant, a little tanner, a little more confident in her posture, as if Paris had lengthened her somehow, like sunlight stretches shadows. We drove home in near silence. She scrolled through her phone, earbuds in. I asked how the trip went. She said it was amazing, said the city was alive in a way she'd never known before. Her eyes flickered as she said it, like there was something in the memory she was guarding. That night over dinner, she showed me photos on her phone. Cobblestone streets, ornate balconies, croissants on delicate plates. But every photo of her had been taken by someone else. Someone not pictured. Someone she never mentioned. Did you go with classmates? I asked casually, slicing into my chicken. She hesitated. Sort of. It was a small group, mostly artists. From your university? She looked down at her plate. Some, yeah. Elaine would have asked a dozen questions. Who exactly? What were they working on? What projects did she enjoy the most? But I asked nothing more. I watched her avoid my eyes and I said nothing, because if I asked, and she lied. I would have to admit I knew. The next morning, I waited until she left to meet a friend for brunch. Then I went into her room. Felt wrong, but there was something I needed to feel under my fingertips. Proof, maybe. Or denial. I didn't touch much. Just opened her suitcase. A receipt caught my eye, tucked between folded dresses. From a boutique in Le Marais. One item purchased. A men's bracelet. Leather. Engraved.
135 euros.
I sat down. It was a gift. For someone. Not me. The next day I took a walk. I needed distance from my house. From the memories curling up like smoke. I ended up in a quiet cafe, ordered black coffee, and watched people walk past with their lives intact. When I returned, Elaine was already home. She was in the kitchen chopping vegetables, humming. She looked up, smiled. You were gone a while. Just needed air. She nodded, said nothing more. That night I heard her whispering in the study. I stepped out of our bedroom and stood in the hallway. Her voice was low, warm. She was speaking in French. Elaine spoke fluent French. She'd studied in Lyon in her 20s before Chloe, before me. But she hadn't used the language in years. Until now. I walked downstairs quietly. The study door was slightly ajar. Her laptop glowed. She wore headphones, but her voice still carried. I caught only fragments.
Bien arrivé, le collier.
Then laughter. Soft. Intimate. I backed away. Returned upstairs. The next morning, she was already up, sipping tea. Eyes scanning a book she didn't seem to be reading. I made eggs. We said little. The man had a name. I learned it 2 weeks later. Mark Bellamy. Associate Professor. Visiting lecturer. Specialist in European contemporary art. He'd been featured in a few niche academic journals, and one Google search brought up a university panel from 3 years ago. He was eloquent, young, 40 maybe, clean-shaven, French. I found a photo of him on a departmental website, and there, standing beside him in another article, was Chloe, her hand lightly resting on his shoulder, both smiling. I saved the image, put it in a folder. Later that week, Elaine announced she was going to a faculty mixer at the university. She dressed carefully. New shoes. Lipstick she hadn't worn in months. She left without a kiss. I didn't ask questions. I sat in the armchair and stared at the fireplace. Empty. Cold. The next day I opened our cell phone bill. Reviewed the call logs. Elaine had added an international plan in March. Paris. I did the same for Chloe. Her logs showed frequent messaging with a French number, especially in May. Then again in June. Still ongoing. I felt hollow. Not angry. Not yet. Just a kind of suspension. Like I was watching my life through a pane of thick glass. That evening, Chloe came home from a bookstore trip. She looked surprised to see me in the living room. Said she was heading upstairs to journal. She forgot her phone on the coffee table. I didn't touch it. I just looked at the screen. A notification banner rolled across. A new message. Mark. Wish you were still here. She came back for the phone seconds later. Her eyes met mine. Something flickered. Good night, she said quickly. Good night. The next morning, I stood in the driveway watching her load her bags. She was headed back to school. Elaine hugged her tightly. Chloe looked past me. Not unkindly, just absently, as if I was furniture. I waved. She didn't see it. Elaine came inside. I followed. In the kitchen, I asked quietly, did she enjoy Paris? Elaine looked at me, careful. She loved it. Did she go with a professor? A pause. It was a guided group. University-sponsored. What was his name? She set down her tea. Daniel. Please. I said nothing. Just waited. Elaine's jaw tightened. Mark Bellamy. He supervised the retreat. And the hotel? The one you helped book. It was part of the package. I nodded, picked up my coffee. She didn't ask how I knew. I didn't say. That night, we slept with more distance between us than I thought a bed could allow. And still, I said nothing, because if I acknowledged it aloud, I would have to do something about it. But I knew. I knew Chloe was involved with him. Knew Elaine had facilitated it. Knew I had funded it all. And I also knew that I had stopped being her father the moment he took her to Paris. The pain wasn't loud. It was quiet, cold, surgical. I slept, but the silence now had shape. And every breath I took inside our home felt like inhaling ghosts. The decision came not in a burst of anger, but in a long, slow hour of stillness. I had stared at my own reflection for too long in the mirror of our upstairs bathroom, noticing the graying temples, the fatigue behind my eyes, the deepening lines that came not from age but from erosion. The kind of erosion that happens not with wind or water but with silence, secrets, and the slow, deliberate betrayal of shared history. So I started moving, quietly, deliberately. The first thing I did was get our bank statements. Every single one from the last 12 months. I spent 3 nights reviewing them line by line. I made spreadsheets. I categorized purchases. I tracked every charge made by Elaine, every wire sent under our joint account. Paris, it turned out, had cost more than I thought. There were boutique hotels not listed on Chloe's itinerary, restaurants that did not sound like group student spots, spa charges, even a few jewelry stores. I printed everything, organized it in a manila folder, labeled it June trip. Next, I updated my passwords, not just the important ones, all of them. Bank, email, cloud backups, even the home security system. Elaine had always had full access. Now she didn't. Then I bought a second phone. Not for calls, for tracking. It ran the spyware app one installed on her device one night when she fell asleep with it charging beside her. I synced the data to a private server, encrypted. I justified it not out of malice, but out of necessity. She had turned our life into a private script, and I wanted a copy. For 2 weeks I watched her interactions. Late-night messages in French. Mentions of M. A reservation for a wine bar in Vancouver that aligned with another night she said she had a conference. I tracked her Uber history, reviewed her text logs. I never opened the messages directly, just observed frequency, time, duration. The pattern was clear. She was still in contact with him, often, and warmly. Chloe too. I didn't touch her phone, but I asked a private investigator to look into her recent whereabouts. Discreetly, I gave him no narrative, just facts, photos, names. He returned 3 days later with a USB drive. I watched the footage that night in the study. It was from her campus. Chloe exiting Mark's office. Late evening. They lingered, spoke closely. She laughed. He touched her shoulder. She leaned into it. Then a kiss. Light. Familiar. I closed the file. Stared at the desktop background. A lake we visited 10 years ago. Chloe had found a turtle there. Shouted with joy. I had carried her on my back when she slipped on the rocks. I removed the background. Replaced it with gray. Elaine noticed my shift. She commented once or twice. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Are you stressed at work?" "A little," I replied. She never pressed. There was one night in particular that stays with me. We sat on the porch swing, the same one she used to read on, her legs curled up beneath her, a wine glass in hand. "Do you ever think about what you'd do differently if you could go back?" she asked. "All the time," I said. She smiled faintly. "I used to think you were the safest place in the world." I nodded. "Maybe that's why you went looking for somewhere else." She turned toward me, a slight frown forming. "What do you mean by that?" I met her gaze, held it, said nothing. She looked away first. A week later, I confronted Mark. Not in person. Through a carefully worded email. Anonymous. Short. It included screenshots. Dates. A warning. Any further communication with Chloe or my wife would result in formal exposure to his university board and media outlets. No threat. Just facts. He never replied. Elaine became restless. I could sense it in her pacing. Her texts became fewer. Her calls shorter. I think she sensed the perimeter tightening. But she didn't suspect the next move. I scheduled a meeting with Ron Calder, the best divorce attorney in Seattle. Known for discretion, he reviewed everything I brought. You have a case strong enough to redraw her future with a pen, he said. I don't want destruction, I replied. Just clarity. He drafted a postnuptial addendum. One that would quietly amend our agreements under the pretense of financial planning. Elaine signed it after a staged conversation about estate protection. It gave me full ownership of the house, froze our shared investments under my name pending review, locked her out of several joint funds. She never read the fine print. Then came the message. Chloe from her campus email. A short, cheerful note. Mark says hi. He misses Paris already. I hope you're doing well. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, tell him Paris was my gift to you. I hope you both remember that. No reply. The final confirmation arrived in mid-August. A friend of mine, a junior lecturer at the university, forwarded me a memo. Mark's contract would not be renewed. No details. Just a polite line about changing departmental directions. Elaine didn't mention it, but she started crying at night. Quietly, I heard her through the wall. I never asked why. She still kissed my cheek every morning. I let her, because the response wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed one more month, and then everything would be set. I would not rage. I would not break. I would prepare. With the same silence they used to betray me. Because sometimes revenge is not fire. Sometimes it is frost. And when it arrives, it doesn't shout. It simply ends things with a whisper. It happened on a Tuesday, September 12th. A date chosen not for sentiment but for symmetry. The beginning of the fall semester. The day Chloe would return to campus. The first day Elaine resumed her full teaching load. A day marked by motion. Beginnings, expectations, plans. I left the house at 7 a.m. Left a note on the fridge. Gone early. Back late. Dinner's in the fridge. It was signed with my name. Not Love, Daniel. Not D. Just the plain signature of a man turning a page. At 8 a.m., Elaine arrived at the university and walked into her office to find an envelope waiting. Inside was a letter. Typed. Formal. Not legal in tone, personal but detached. It outlined what I knew. Not all the evidence, just enough. The hotel confirmations. The texts. The bracelet. The photos. I ended the letter with a single paragraph. There are many ways a man can break. Loud ways. Messy ways. I chose this one instead. Quiet. Final. You'll find the rest of the story waiting at home. She called me 3 times that morning. I didn't answer. Texts followed. Daniel, please call me. Where are you?
I'm sorry.
Can we talk? At 11 a.m., Chloe received a package at her dorm. Overnight. No return address. Inside was a photocopy of every receipt I paid for her education, her flights, her lodging. Highlighted in yellow was each transaction tied to Paris. There was a handwritten note. Just one sentence. He took you to Paris, but I paid the fare. At noon, the lawyer served Elaine at her office. Papers filed. Divorce initiated. Terms enclosed. No alimony. House retained by me. Joint assets split at 90/10 my favor. Grounds. Emotional betrayal. Financial deceit. Ron had made it clean. Surgical. At 3 p.m., Elaine arrived home. She used her key, but the lock had already been changed. She stood on the porch for 13 minutes. I know this because I watched from across the street, from the rental car I'd taken for the day. Her hands trembled. She called someone. Maybe Chloe. Maybe her sister. Eventually she sat on the steps. That red door she'd picked out now shut to her. I didn't approach. I waited until she left. When I returned home at 6 p.m., the sun was low. The house was silent. I walked through it slowly, each room still, echoing. On the kitchen island was another envelope. This one from Elaine. I didn't open it. Instead, I walked into the living room, turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of water, sat down, and exhaled. That night there was no shouting, no confrontation, no dramatic departure, just absence. A week later, Elaine moved in with her sister. Chloe emailed. Twice. The first time, short. Please talk to me. The second, longer. Apologetic, wounded. Still self-centered. I didn't respond. I sent her final tuition payment to the school. Marked it last. Then I removed myself as guarantor from any future billing. She would finish her degree without me. And she would know why. Mark was gone. Whether by the university's hand or his own, I didn't care. One day, I received an anonymous envelope. No name, just a single Polaroid inside. Him and Chloe, holding hands near the Seine. I burned it. Months passed. Elaine filed no contest. She tried once to meet me in person. I declined. I wanted no apology shaped by guilt. No closure scripted to soothe her discomfort. Some betrayals aren't loud. They bleed you with a whisper, one day at a time, and then one day the bleeding stops, and what's left isn't anger. It's not revenge. It's peace. The kind you find when you finally stop making space for people who never saw you as whole. I moved 6 months later. Took a job in Spokane. Smaller town. Quieter nights. I bought a house with 1 bedroom. No porch swing. Just a lake nearby and a desk by the window. Some nights I think about what I lost. Then I remind myself, I didn't lose anything. They did. I found something. Not love. Not trust. Freedom. And that finally is enough.